Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters. And for many veterans, the battle doesn't end when they leave service. Sometimes the hardest fights come after the uniform comes off. Today's guest, Nathan Mechikoff, knows firsthand. A 9-year Army and National Guard veteran, Nathan's service was shaped by moments of immense sacrifice, including deployments to Iraq, where he survived major attacks and even found himself lost in enemy terrain, which I'm sure we're going to get to. But it was what came after losing teammates, his job, his marriage, and facing back to back crises that tested him in ways no training could prepare him for. Instead of breaking, he rebuilt. Now, with over 16 years leading network security teams across federal, state, tribal, and private industries, he serves as the chief information security office for VST LLC. He's also paying it forward as a subcommittee member for California's OES Workforce Development and Education Task Force, and is currently writing a book on overcoming trauma and obstacles. Nathan's story is about resilience, rebuilding, and pushing forward even when the path ahead feels impossible. His advice to veterans: when the world gives you no feedback, no help, and no clear direction, you fight anyway. I can't wait for you to hear his journey. So, Nathan, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, man. Yeah, glad to be here.
Dude, excited to have you. So let's jump right in, man. Where did you grow up, and what was the inspiration to join the Army and the Guard?
Well, I love that question because most people are like, oh, I grew up here or there. I always default to California, right? So I grew up in the Bay Area. So it's like South Bay, Morgan Hill, Cupertino, and was there for, like first 11 years of my life. And so I have this really wonderful connection to the Bay Area. But summer of 2011, family moves back to the Central Valley. So we're moving back to Fresno and, kind of go through high school, junior high, all that. And really it was 9/11, man. It was like sixth grade. So it kind of shows my age. Like I was not the age to be like, oh, I need to join tomorrow. But yeah. I didn't find out about the attacks for a week. So what? I was on the beach being a bum, doing like this California beach camp, right? So we're just hanging out. And I get home after this, I think it was like, give or take about a week afterwards. And I turn on the TV, news comes up, and it's all the highlight reels of towers falling, everything. And I'm like, Mom, we're under attack. Oh my God, you see this? And I just remember her response. She's like, oh, that was last week. That was last week.
That's old news, son.
That's old news. And my neighbor, God bless him, his name is John Savona. He was a Marine from the Korea time frame. So he was a chosen Marine. He was in Chosin Reservoir. He was in, I can't pronounce it ever, but the Incheon landings. Like this was the dude, if you want a mentor, he's the guy. And he's like, bring your kids over and I'll kind of get them interested in the military. Because I was just passionate about doing my part, even at 11 years old. Mm-hmm. And talked to my neighbor, and I remember him being like, well, if you're going to get in, join the Corps, do this, like just really passionate about that. And I remember him showing us videos of just like, I can't remember what it was. It's just these snipers like in the foothills, like taking out goats. And you probably saw the videos. There's like some guy with like a 50 cal and he's like shooting at goats and they're just blowing up.
Oh yeah,
and he's
across
like,
the mountain ranges. Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, he's like, get some, man. I'm like 11 years old. And so, yeah, throughout like high school and everything, difficult time in high school, junior high, just a lot of life happened. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this. I want to serve my country. I want to serve my community. I need to go to college. No one in my family went to get an education. So I'm like, I need to go and do this. This is how I pay for it. And so that was kind of the catalyst of kind of starting my service, of getting in. I one day walked into the recruiter. I'm like, hey, I want to join, want to pay for college, want to do my part. They're like, what do you want to do? Something with computers. And so that was it. He comes back a couple of days later. He's like, here you go. You're going to be in Signal Corps for the Army. You ship out in a couple months. Congratulations, man. So it was a very long gestation period from like 11 years old to being, 18 and joining.
So let me ask you, did growing up in kind of the Silicon Valley area, Cupertino area, headquarters of Apple, did that influence kind of your tech kind of, desire to get into tech?
It slightly, because I've had to look at that. Like, I think everybody in my family has been in the trade. So whether they're electricians, my father and his father, they were in the excavation, earth moving business. So like everybody in the family was, these blue collar, hard working folks that just, they're doing the work that our country needs. They're the backbone of it all. And so for
Yeah.
me, I think the piece that they all had was they have this troubleshooting mindset of like, oh, if there's a problem, we fix it. If our house needs work, we're going to do it ourselves. Like the family is the type of family who's like, we don't hire people to do the work for us. We do it ourselves. And
Same.
so, yep, I think with IT, it was always just something that was like, hey, I really find interest in this growing up in the 90s where there's this huge boom. And, we lived in Morgan Hill for the majority of it. But we had family all throughout San Francisco, San Rafael. But Cupertino, we were about a block and a half away from the Apple headquarters, Infinite Loop. So, I mean, you're driving daily and you're seeing like, oh, wow, this is where they're doing all that cool stuff. And so it really
Yeah.
just kind of, I would say it lit a fire a little bit inside of like, okay, I could do that too. It's not some far off place. It's here at home.
Well, see, and the reason I ask is because we're relatively the same age. I've got you by about 5 years or whatever. No big deal. I imagine you probably had a computer in your house before I did, and so like 9/11, I was a sophomore in high school. I didn't have a computer in my house until I was a senior in high school, right? So 2003 is when I graduated, and I think it's not that people didn't have computers. It was one, we didn't have money, and two, I lived in southern Indiana, right? So technology just kind of making its way across the country or whatever, being that it seems to have started kind of all in Silicon Valley and then moved eastward. Obviously New York would get, stay caught up with California, but it just, I mean, my high school didn't even have a computer lab until I was a senior in high school. So like technology was just not one of those things that like I was very inspired by or whatever, because I didn't get to spend a lot of time around it before I was an adult. I mean, again, didn't have a cell phone. I had a cell phone when I was 17. I had the Verizon, the StarTAC. It was the first flip phone ever. And I remember my first bill, I had to pay, it was like $100 for the phone itself. And my bill was $17 a month. And it was like the coolest thing ever because, it was affordable and it was like this new technology. But, I didn't have that very long before I shipped off to basic training and then realized, oh, I'm going to be bound by this cell phone for the rest of my damn life, right? Like it just interesting to see how far things have come, and I really like that you were inspired by tech, particularly as the premise of this show is to highlight what veterans went through in transition and what they're doing on the other side of transition and how all those skills can translate. And the tech boom is here again, right? With AI and cybersecurity being big things. And I know you're a network guy, right? That's what you do.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So I do network security. So yeah, we're dealing with the infrastructure, but I also have a huge part of my career that is based in the military and even civilian side, where it is cybersecurity, securing the bleeding edge of technology.
And it seems like there's just this giant push here recently in the last 6 months or so for more cybersecurity. IVMF has reached out, and we've done a live here with their new Google cybersecurity certificates for veterans. I see billboards here around Florida, like encouraging people to go to Full Sail and get into a cybersecurity career. I have a couple of other people that have some cybersecurity offers out there that are reaching out to me like, hey, will you help me promote this? We need veterans in technology, particularly in cybersecurity. So I think it's just really interesting. I have fallen down the AI rabbit hole, and like that's clearly the future, learning how to leverage AI and install it into businesses and stuff like that. And so it's just really fascinating that like if you're a veteran getting out right now, you really should be looking at tech, and you should really forget about all those certifications that you need, because it's ripe for the taking right now. There's plenty of programs out there that can get you into these fields, get you the certifications that you need, and I think there's a hell of a lot of money to be made in that industry. And so when you were in the Army and the Guard as a Signal Corps guy, what was what were you primarily doing? Network security or, just cybersecurity in general? Like, what did your career look like?
So like with, well, I'll kind of take you through the beginning, right? So like after basic, you're going right to AIT, and it's about I would say there's the entire 25 series, and you're going to have multiple different, guys like, hey, you're working on satellites, you're working on radios, and then you have what's called, the 25 Bravo, which is myself. So you're an information technology specialist. You're more of a generalist, right? You deal with networks, you deal with satellites, you do it all. But your focus is basically just like, hey, I'm here as a technician, open slot, where do you want to put me? And in the school, you're taking your A plus, your N plus, your security plus certification. So you're doing like basic IT certs, and then you're going and doing some network certs, how to work on servers, how to work on wireless. And so they take you through, there's a lot of companies that have boot camps now, but they're really taking you through a military boot camp of technology, getting you certified. And then when I got to my unit, it was, originally I was like, hey, I want to serve, but I also want to go to college. So I enlisted with the College First program. But of course, I get to my unit and they're like, hey, do you want to go to Iraq?
That's not happening.
No, well, they the option. They're like, hey, you have it. It's in your contract, but do you want to go to Iraq? And I was like, yeah, I'll go to Iraq. So I signed it off. I was like, hey, I'm going to waive my College First option. I'm going to go. And so the year lead up to Iraq was, hey, we're going to send you to this school for high capacity radios. We're going to send you this school for satellites. We're going to send you this school for the Blue Force tracker. We're going to send you to all these courses.
The BFT, that thing is such a piece of shit.
It sucked. The Dagger and all that stuff.
Yeah, man. Dagger was awful too. Did you do anything with the counter IED stuff too, or no?
I didn't, but we had some teams. Like, it's the wonderful thing about IT is, yeah, it's general, but the opportunities, right? You have some guys, like, you have the phrase like experience may vary. You have some guys that'll come in and they're just like, hey, I worked at help desk, or I worked IT as just a normal IT guy for, my 9, 10, 20 years. But you'll have other people, kind of like what you just mentioned with like counter IED stuff. Actually, now that I remember, I did. So when I got back, I was stationed at Camp Roberts over on the Central Coast. And while I was there, they had, I think it was BAE or Booz Allen, those guys, and they had like a counter IED team, and they teach those classes. But they were signal guys. They were like, hey, we're not engineers. We don't do this full time, but they got trained up on that technology, and they were actually developing new tech that they could use in the field. And so you have the opportunity to kind of make your own path if the opportunity presents itself. And that's what I teach a lot of people is, I don't believe in luck, but luck is just, like they say, it's opportunity and preparation when they meet. So you're going to have an opportunity. You just got to be prepped for it.
I love it, man. I love
it. There's a ton of opportunity out there for a lot of interesting stuff.
When was your Iraq deployment?
2010, 2011.
Where were you?
That was we were about 20 miles north of Baghdad. So a cop or a fob, Taji. I think it used to be.
No way,
Cook.
Dude.
Yeah.
You were at Taji?
Yeah, Taji.
In 2010 and 11? I was actually at Taji in 2010 and 11 also. We were the ARF platoon for about 90 days. Yeah, so we were the aerial recovery force. So we stayed in the hangars and we would train with the birds. So, yeah, it was really cool, man. It was like, so that was my third Iraq deployment. It was 10, 11, or 9, 10 into 11, something like that. I can't remember. I did so many, but yeah, I always like to ask people because, I've done over 100 of these episodes at this point, and it's so funny how small, the military in general is, because I was in a lot of the same places on a lot of deployments as a lot of my guests, and it's just, we never even knew it, right? Like,
I may have even worked with you guys, man. Like, I remember going to the flight line multiple times, and I can't even remember who it was, but it was just like the break area for pilots and stuff. And we had some other mechanic shops, and we'd go in and we were at the, I deployed with the brigade. So I deployed with the 40th Combat Aviation Brigade, and they S6 shop, there you go. But
Yeah.
we were kind of tasked out with everybody of like, hey, if our battalions, if the company level needs assistance, like we're just going to farm you out to everybody. So I was hopping from base to base. I was going like, fortunately, I had a great experience with some guys with, I think it was the 64th GFARs with the PJs. And so
Yeah.
they're like, hey, we need help with our ComSec renewal. We need help with our radios and our fills. And so we got to talk with them and see kind of the difference in the different departments and how they work. So
Yeah.
a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, Taji was awesome for us because we were the lone infantry platoon tasked to the aviation unit in case they had a bird crash. We were the ones that were supposed to go out and pull the pilots out and then destroy all the technology. So we would do a lot of training with those guys. And it was a welcome break because we got to stay in the giant hangar. Our whole platoon, each member of the platoon had its own like room and space versus like living on shitty cops like I was used to. And so, being 200 meters from the DFAC and 200 meters from the gym, it was like, man, this is a wet dream for an infantry guy being deployed. And so we were sad when our 3 months came to an end and they sent us back to go do real infantry stuff again. So yeah, Taji was awesome.
Which I think you mentioned it, which unit, but were you with the first ID or the 82nd or?
No, I was with the third ID at the time. So we were the only platoon of third ID. So the rest of my my battalion was in Mamadiya, Lusafia, and Cadicia. And we would rotate platoons from our BCO 27 infantry was each platoon would take 90-day rotation to Taji. We got tasked with that ARF platoon mission. It was like the first time ever that we had been tasked to do anything like that. So it was kind of fucked up like a football bat because we had never trained or done anything like this. So, we were the first platoon to go. It's kind of in the middle of the deployment. And it was only supposed to be like a month, and then some other shit happened with the battalion, so we ended up getting stuck there for 90 days, which was great. And then we didn't want to leave, and then we had a pretty, I don't want to say all the bad things, but we just didn't have some great leadership who took it out on our platoon. And so after the Taji rotation for us, they just worked us into the ground, man. They just shit on our platoon, and then the other two platoons, they got to spend the rest of the time at Taji while we covered down on all the rest of the operations for the company. And it just was not a great situation, but the actual Taji experience was awesome. And I just think it's really cool that we were there at the same time, and we literally just met this morning. That's pretty cool.
Well, and it's funny because Taji is kind of like, I'm coming up on 17 years in the industry, if you will, since I enlisted. And Taji was always that, like, it was really that first firefight, if you will, right? Like, that's where, I kind of cut my teeth, if you will. Like, that's where it's like, hey, I'm actually doing this IT thing, but I'm doing it while I'm getting shot at. I'm doing it, in a hostile environment. And it's so crazy, man, because, like, I had a guy that I can't remember if it was on the way to Iraq, if it was on the way back, or if it was on like leave in the middle. But actually, I think it was leave in the middle. I'm coming back from the States, and I think it was like Al Assad. I don't know if it was Buring, but or maybe it was like whatever base you had to go to first before going in country.
Yeah, Al Assad.
Yeah, there's like four. And I can't remember.
Yeah, it was
which
like
one
Al Assad, Camp Buring, Camp New York, and there was like one other one. I saw all of those four that you're talking about from my first deployment to my last deployment. I watched them build those up to what they were. Like I remember Al Assad when it was just an open desert field, and you had to walk like a mile from your tents to the chow hall, and then just behind the chow hall was vehicle staging area when we used to drive from Kuwait up to wherever you were going in Iraq. So I got to see that whole evolution of all those places. And like, by the time I'm coming through Al Assad on R&R for Afghanistan, because Manis Kyrgyzstan is where you go into Afghanistan at, but I would leave, you still go through Al Assad, and the Marines ended up owning Al Assad, and so now there's a McDonald's, and I was like, none of this shit was here the last time I was here. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's like people, they're just living normal lives there. They forget that there's even war going on.
Oh, I know. I get it. It's like, hey, you get to see kind of what we're fighting for, and you get those things, like they deserve it. But it's such a weird dynamic. Different country, but it seems like you're back in the States, but you're in
Yeah.
the desert. Oh man.
Yeah,
But
don't even
it's,
get me started on the Air Force's Qatar rotations that they call deployments.
if you want to call them those, yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I get to listen to my brother-in-law and sister because they were both Air Force talk about their deployments to Qatar. And I'm like, you didn't do a deployment. We used to send infantry guys to Qatar to go ride jet skis for a 4-day pass. That's how we treated Qatar, so it's not a
Yeah.
deployment in my mind.
No, it's like, I mean, there, and that's the difficult part is like, I have guys who, they've gone to Kuwait for all their deployments, and I don't shit on them for it. The experience may vary again, but there's that unspoken bond with guys. Like, it's like, hey, we've never met before today, but now I'm like, oh, you've gone through the same shit I've gone through. It's like,
Yeah.
you automatically know.
Yeah.
But it's such a small world too. Like that guy, I ran into him. I think it was Al Assad, and I'm sitting in a tent. I don't even have my weapon. I just have like my assault pack, and there's one label that says Afghanistan this way, Iraq this way, as far as going to the PAX terminals. And I'm sitting there, and I look over, and I'm like, Carlos? And he's like, Nate? And we start talking, and it's my buddy from high school, and he's going Afghanistan, I'm going Iraq. And so, like, what are the odds I'm running into somebody from my state, from my town, from my high school, in my graduating class that I played football with? Like,
Yeah.
what a small world, man. And it just, I don't know, like anybody who asks me like, hey, should I get into the military to get into IT? I'm like, I can't speak for you, but I would say like all the benefits in my mind outweigh the negatives. Like, yeah, you're going to have some negative shit that's going to happen, but the bonds that you have with people, and I think that's what a lot of people miss. I know I do, is that bond and that like common understanding of like, hey, we're trauma bonding. We're going through the same shit, same time. I got your back, you got mine. And civilian side, we just don't got that.
So I think this is an interesting thing that we should explore is people asking you to go to the military for IT stuff. And I think you might be right. I think it's probably a solid like, for example, infantry guys, like I wouldn't recommend anybody join the infantry. In fact, when I give advice to parents who reach out to me, like, would you suggest my kid join the military? Part of my spiel is, yeah, but go to college first and do an RTC program, be an officer. You're going to make more money. You're going to have a lot more choices. You're going to develop better. You're going to grow a network better. All of those nuanced things that we don't think about in the differences between officer and enlisted. And I always tell them to go to the Air Force, just because I watched my sister's career and my brother-in-law's career, and the Air Force is just way better than the Army ever treated us. Like, it's just a statement of fact. I still love the Army. I don't regret anything in my career, but I'm curious, is a career in IT, is the military like one of the best routes to get all of those certifications and stuff? Because I know some of these certifications when you get out are expensive. I know that the GI Bill won't cover a lot of the certifications that you end up needing to be a professional in the space. So, like, do you honestly like think that is probably the best route to get into IT?
I do. I mean, unbiased. Well, it is biased.
Of course. I just, somebody from the outside, right? Like, who doesn't, I'm self-taught in everything that I know, from Python to, the IT stuff that I do know, to being way down the AI rabbit hole. Like I mentioned, like everything is self-taught. I've taught myself how to code, how to read it and write HTML, Python, all that stuff, because I couldn't afford to go to the boot camps because I already exhausted my GI Bill before I found out what I was actually interested in. I also looked at, IT and coding and stuff like that, software engineering. I always looked at it as like something that was unobtainable for me, mainly because I look at the courses that you need to take, and like, I don't have that math background. I don't have a calculus background. I don't have a physics background. A lot of that's needed to get a degree in software engineering. However, you don't really need it to understand how to code or to learn Python. I'm currently in a Python Cisco course right now that's free to me through the IVMF, being a EBV participant. And what I've realized is like, that stuff is not as scary as it looks, before you know anything about it. It's actually, in my mind, and this may not make sense to a lot of people, but in my mind, it's just like learning how to read aviation weather when I was in flight school. Like, it looks intimidating until you have the tools to decode it. And then once you decode it, it's just like reading English. Like,
Oh
genuinely,
yeah.
I feel that way.
Well, I think there's a level of fear that people have to kind of push through, right? I remember, just like anybody, you're waiting for your call date or your ship out date for basic, and you're just like, man, what's it going to be? How long is it going to be? Am I going to be okay? Same thing with deployments. Like, am I going to survive this? Am I going to be all right? And there's a level of perseverance, right? And just like reassurance. And with my faith, I'm like, okay, well, that's where I put a lot of my trust in. Like, okay, I can't do this on my own. You're going to help me through this, God. Like, that's the whole point of faith, right? It's the trust there. And I think with school, the same thing. Like, there's a lot of things in IT I don't know. There's a lot of things I do know. And each person that I've mentored or has come and asked me, like, hey, how do I get in? It's the unknown, right? They're like, I know nothing about programming. I know nothing about networks. But once I say, like, just start doing something, as stupid as that sounds, because a great example I had was either LinkedIn or TikTok, right? I was like, I used to be into film full time. Like, that deployment got me interested in film and cinematography, and I knew nothing about it. And so when I got back, when TikTok started kicking off, I'm like, man, I see all these people with these big followings and all these things. How do I get there? And I'm like, screw it. I'm gonna break out of my comfort zone. I keep telling myself that I'm not gonna be able to do this, and I'm just like pushing myself down. I'm like, I'm just gonna make a post a day. I'm gonna go in the backyard. I'm gonna film for 30 seconds, and each one I'm gonna try to do. I'm trying to tell a story here. Maybe I'll correct the color. Maybe I'll correct the composition. Same thing with LinkedIn. I'm like, I don't have a following. And then I'm like, I'm going to post every day. I'm going to improve this piece. I'm going to improve my resume. And I'm just like, those slow, minute, tiny little changes will compound, and eventually
100%.
your momentum picks up. And that's the same thing of getting into IT or technology, of like, you're not going to know it all. You're going to be the low man on the totem pole. You're going to feel like an idiot because you don't know how to solve this problem, but you have to start. That's it. Just start. And
Dude, I couldn't agree with you more, because it's the same thing with me. I'm really into the low code cursors and windsurfs, building SaaS products, particularly because I think as far as AI goes, it's the one thing, it's the future for sure, without question. Particularly when you start looking at MCP servers and giving AI more functionality for it to do the things that you want it to do. But with that comes learning how to open your terminal on your computer and just type in, something as simple as like npm install Node.js. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know how to do that, and I was so afraid of it, mainly because I'm like, I'm gonna fuck something up. Well, I've realized you can't really fuck it up. Like, you really can't, because there's simple commands inside the terminal that you can just go and undo everything that you've done. So it's like, or you can actually use AI to help you understand how to do this. And I think I've learned more just from the hands-on approach and just taking that action, right? Same thing like what you're talking about with TikTok and LinkedIn. I started my LinkedIn November 5th of 2023. I had an account long before that. I only had 92 followers. It took me 474 days to cross 11,000 followers. You know what I mean? It's just like you said, small, consistent actions. And I want to speak to that because you said it, like, I'm going to get out of my own way and I'm just going to do this. And I think a key to that is realizing that when you first start, nobody's looking at your shit. They're just not.
No.
They're not seeing it. Nobody's going to judge anything. And, it serves as a benchmark for you. I go back and look at some of the, the podcasts that I first recorded, and I can see the evolution of, doing the podcast over 100+ episodes. I can see the evolution of my LinkedIn, at certain milestones and different level ups. And it all really does inform kind of what actions you're supposed to take next. And I think that's like the biggest secret that I've learned about any of this stuff is, like, if you just dive in with both feet and get your hands dirty and just take some action, you will gather enough information to inform what you're supposed to do next.
Well, it's those small changes again, like a man that's been around, like me. I've been doing this for 17 years. I have, all this experience. And there's a quote, there's a wonderful movie, very, very emotional movie, Wind River, if you've ever seen that one.
Have not.
I forget, I think it's Jeremy Renner. And it's based on, I kind of started watching it. So I started working for a tribal government back in 2022. And like me, I know nothing about tribal nations or their history outside of what I've learned in school or my family's taught me. And so I was like, oh, just, this interesting movie. It's about, sexual trauma and missing women of indigenous communities and how we just don't track it. And long story short, there's two fathers who lost their kids, and they're sitting next to each other looking off in the distance. And he realizes, he's like, man, I got to go pick my son up, and my son's going through all this stuff. And his friend says to him, he's like, go easy on him. Young men don't have our experience with pain, or don't have our experience with trauma. And I think there's so many different ways you can relate to that, of like, whether it's your job search or breaking into an industry. It's like, hindsight is 2020. You look back and you're like, oh, I've been through worse, or I've done this, and you're able to kind of settle it. So like, when life starts kicking my ass, which is daily, I look back in the library and I'm like, oh, dude, I'm gonna be okay. I've seen this. I've been through so much worse. And even if it is the worst thing I've ever gone through up to that point, I'm still like, I got my God behind me. I got my family. I got my friends. I can get through this, and I'm just not somebody who's going to give up. And I think that's a mindset that anybody who's trying to get into any field or trying to do any endeavor should do. Like the book I'm trying to write, I started with nothing, right? And I'm like, well, what if I want to write this book about my experience? Like, what do I do? So I was just like, I'm terrible at writing. Let me just put my mic on. I'll do direct dictation. And I just spent like 6 months just going from kind of what we're doing today. Like, what's my history? What have I done? What was my deployment? And what was this deployment like? All the trauma I've been through, all the terrible stuff. And now I have like 500-600 pages that I need to like condense down into a story with a theme. And so it helped me with my trauma, but it also helped me say like, oh, this immeasurable task that I have no ability to do, I have 500 pages. I cleaned up the grammar, and I cleaned this up, and I'm going to work with a copywriter, and we're going to figure this out. And it's like, I took that large step and I started hacking away at it. And now I have this, goal that I've set out to do that's almost finished in front of me.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. And so this is like the perfect segue into your transition. And you're obviously writing a book about trauma. Trauma is, in my opinion, probably one of the things that affects us most as veterans, particularly getting out, that we don't even realize we're dealing with it. So talk about, you described experiencing trauma both overseas and after coming home. So talk about what that looked like in your transition out of the military and all of that. And how did you cope and deal with that stuff, the good, the bad, the ugly? How did you figure out the healthy way to deal with the trauma versus, I'm sure you had an element of, similar to me, trying to drown the trauma away with alcohol or illicit drugs, or, I don't know what your story is. And that's what we're here to find out.
Yeah, man, it's like, I got in 2008, married in 2010. And, pretty much immediately after, like 2 months after I got married, I'm overseas, I'm deployed. And, that deployment, that first one, that was rough. I mean, if you compare it to 99% of other deployments, like it's nothing. Like, in no way I'm saying like, hey, we're these badass dudes, but we had some moments where, I had some guys that over by one of the gyms, we had large mortar attack. And this was like 2 days after we got bin Laden. So I think this was on like May 4th. We had the largest mortar attack since the beginning of the war. It was like a 5-minute attack of like 200 some odd shells just raining down on us. And that was the first time I ever got shot at. And I'm like, all right, close my eyes, said a prayer. I'm sitting in my chew and I'm just waiting. I'm like, well, they just told us a week ago that a couple of these chews burned up because of indirect fire. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
And so got through that, and I was like, all right, on to the next one, on to the next one. And the next one, really the one that kind of set the tone was kind of like today. I'm sitting at a desk. I'm getting ready for my shift, and we're doing like 12 on, 12 off. Got my instant coffee. I'm sitting down. I'm like, all right, doing my checks. Everything's good. I got my guys. And just one huge round just hits. You know how it goes. Sand, dust, everything comes up, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm in the Middle East. There's, it's like you're in a storm almost. Like everything's blinding you. And I'm like, okay, I'm the CLS guy. I grab my CLS bag. After we kind of assess, all right, everything's good, I run out. And right outside the door, I see this huge plume just coming up, and it's like maybe less than 100 yards. And I start running over, and I see out of the mist, if you will, 4 guys start walking towards us. And I got, Captain Schiffer, Lieutenant Glover flanking our 2 chaplains, Lieutenant Colonel St. Clair and Staff Sergeant Dow. And they're walking in. And the story they told me ahead of time afterwards was it actually hit the generator right outside the chapel. Huge gas tank, blew it up. I mean, just absolutely ripped apart the chapel. They have these large steel doors, blew off the steel doors. And the captain and the staff sergeant, they walk in, and they thought these guys were dead. They were just sprawled out on the ground. And so they pick them up, they get them out, and they start walking them towards our building. And I'm like, I just see the 4 horsemen walking towards me. I'm like, that's badass, but also, oh, you guys okay? You guys good? I thought you guys were dead, man. I just see the smoke coming from the church. I'm like, my buddies are gone, man. Yeah. So thank God, they're still dealing with, all the medical stuff that they had to deal with that post getting out. But they're still with us. We got them back, and we start setting up a medical triage center. And I get one of our chiefs coming in, and he comes in, and he's just gushing. He's bleeding on the front of his face. And I'm the CLS guy. And I get my bag, and I open it up, and nothing's where it needs to be. Like, nothing's ready. I'm like, okay. And he's like, dude, help me out. And I just happen to be the IT guy. I have electrical tape, and I just start taping the shit out of his head with electrical tape. And I'm like, good to go. After everything's cleared, we load him up in a vehicle. We get him back to the medical tent, and they're off to the races. And so we found out afterwards, like, I grabbed the wrong bag. I grabbed somebody else's bag, and they hadn't prepped their bag. And so that moment for me was like, okay, I got to be prepared. Like, I hate this feeling of not being ready for it. And so, a few years go by. I'm back in the States, and I call this my cycle of pain. It starts with finding out my wife was, having affairs while I was gone. I'm like, okay, that's traumatic. We start trying to work on this marriage. And through that process, we already have one son, and we're trying to have others. And we have one pregnancy that gets about halfway through, 6 or 7 months, we lose the baby. About a year later, we're doing the same thing. 6, 7 months, we lose the baby. So just 2 in a row, boom. And then, again, right after that, I think it was like June of 2015, I'm done with work, still in uniform, I'm driving home. I see this long line of cars on the 101, and it's all military vehicles, and they're all stopped. And I'm like, what's going on over there? And I see there's a rollover. So I get out of my vehicle, go up. I got my CLS bag. I'm prepped. I'm like, okay, I'm ready, man.
I got this. Yeah.
I got this. And so I go, and it's a large embankment. You got one road up here, one road down there. And from what we could tell, there was a drunk driver who hit somebody behind, ran him off the road. So 2 vehicles. And I get down to the vehicle, and it's caved in on the front. And I get to it, people surrounding it. We get them all back. I'm the only military person that I could see. And I open it and I see a service member in the back, and she's holding pressure on this woman's head. And I get in, and it's just open it up. Her whole skull is just completely severed. I think the glass from it just basically just cut her head in half. She's alive and she's talking. And so I deal with that. We do our transition there. I help the drunk driver. We get him in a neck brace. We do all that. And then we do our transition of care over the fire. That day, and the reason I bring all that up is like the next day, or actually same day, I drive home and I just start breaking down. Like all the stuff that was buried from that deployment, everything that had gone on there is just, okay, the doors are open now. I don't know why. I don't know why this one event is taking me through that. I think maybe because I'm stateside and I'm not expecting it, or maybe I'm mentally not prepared for this. But that happens. And I'm like, okay. And so about 6 months later, one of my mentors, Dan Ward, he's an E6, I'm an E5, and he's been mentoring me in IT for the military for at least 5 years. He gets in a rollover and he dies. We lose him.
Fuck.
6 months later, my other mentor, Jerry, same thing. He's IT. He's a signal commo guy. I've known him, been to his wedding. Wonderful dude, know his family. I think he got, if I remember the story right, he got shot in Afghanistan or Iraq, or maybe it was Kuwait back in the day, and he just got sepsis suddenly and he died. So two of my friends, service members, all of this that I'm telling you is happening within like 6 months. And then I'm in the Guard, and I have a civilian employer who's a good friend of mine. His name's Tom. And 2 months after Jerry dies, he dies.
Jesus, brother.
And then about 2 months later, I'm still in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get back into the military full time. There's another vehicle rollover, but this time it's 2 civilians that are on post, and they crash head-on collision. They're going like 70 miles an hour. Doors fly open. They have little kids in the back. The kids are flying out into the road, almost get run over. The other vehicle's just torn up. We're in the middle of nowhere. So I'm grabbing this lady out of the car. She lost her leg. There's this elderly lady who's just, in the shit. And I'm dealing with these kids, and they're bleeding. I'm getting them in the back of my vehicle. And we deal with that. We hand them off to fire. Everything's good. And everything I just told you, again, like within 6 months to a year. And I'm like, my marriage is falling apart. I'm losing my buddies more back home than I am overseas. Everything I'm dealing with from Iraq is coming up. I'm having to deal with civilians and their rollover. And about an hour after that last crash, I'm like, I'm off of work. I'm going to a bachelor party for my cousin. And I shit you not when I say this, like I get there and they're like, man, there's a crazy accident back there. And I'm just like, okay, there's booze over here. I can't feel this right now. I probably drank a handle by myself of Fireball or something. Like I was gone, man. Like it was. I drank so much, and then right at the end, like my cousin, one of him, he's a firefighter, so he's like, "Wait, you were out there? You saw that crash?" And he starts, kind of trauma dumping about all of his stuff. He's like, "Oh, I've been there before," and I'm spiraling. I'm spiraling at this point. And he's like, "Hey, you want to hit?" And he gives me a pipe, and we find out later, like he didn't know where he bought it from or who he bought it from. So it wasn't just Molly, it was something else. I think they said possibly LSD or something. And so I start tripping so bad, like I'm out of body experience, and we're up at like in the mountains, like there's no hospital, no nothing. And so I'm like, all right, guys, I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the bathroom. And this is like, 10 o'clock at night. They don't see me until the next morning at like 6. But I remember that whole period. Like I go into the bathroom. It's a standing shower, with like the bottom that's about this deep. And I'm drowning, actually drowning. I'm in the fetal position in the shower. I'm puking up. The shower's not on. I'm drowning in my own vomit. I'm sitting in the shower, just everything, all this trauma that's coming up. I'm in it, like I'm feeling every single thing, and I'm just drowning in my own vomit. somehow I get the shower on, and water's coming, and I can't pick myself up. I'm drowning in my own, own excrement here. Probably shit myself too. Like I'm in it.
Well, I
And
mean, LSD and a handle of Fireball will do that to you, right?
so I all of the alcohol is gone, which thank God. But
Yeah.
now I'm just tripping hard. Like I'm in it. I'm in a tunnel. Like I'm seeing 10 years into the future. I'm seeing colors I've never seen before. Like I'm and the next morning I wake up and I am stone cold sober. I'm like, okay, I need some help with this. Like I can't keep going down that road. And so I, go home and I start, like I got to talk to somebody. I talked to like one of the local churches, and they're nice, but like they have no idea what's going on or how to help. So I'm dealing with that. And after that happens, about a month later, there's another vehicle rollover. And
What is with you and vehicle rollovers, brother?
I'm just in the right spot at the right time. So this time it was like a 16-year-old kid, and I'm like, man, what am I doing here? Like what's God trying to get me to do? And so all of this is happening, and I at that moment I'm like, I can't stay in the military because I'm not effective. I have to do something different. So at that point I transition out. I start working for the company that the owner passed away from. Mm-hmm. And they're like, now we're not going to stay open. We got to sell it. So they get acquired by somebody. And it's just, that job is not working out for me very well because they're ethically compromised. Like they're not taking care of their people. They're not doing what they need to do. And for me, that kind of started my, okay, what do I do to get better? How do I be the best father, husband? How do I do all of this? And that's when I started writing my book, started going to church, started really just diving into my faith, because I could not save myself. Mm-hmm. I needed some intervention, right? And that's where I have such a high level of, well, maybe there's a better way to describe it. My faith is structured in such a way where I'm like, I know I'm not enough to pull through this on my own. Like I need something supernatural, and that's where Christ comes in. Mm-hmm. And so with all of this, started writing the book. I'm like, I need to get everything out of my mind because it's just sitting there. I can't organize it. And so I start just putting it all on paper. I start getting it out. I start going to therapy at the VA. I start doing all these things. And once I started dealing with all this trauma, and it's still, it's a lifelong thing. It's never going to be finished. But once I started working on this, and I'm like, okay, I got this. I met my now wife, and we have two more kids, and she's in the Navy. And so she's dealing with all her stuff. And now I'm like, okay, cool. I'm at a spot where I can support her. I'm at a spot where I can, be that spouse, that husband, that father I need to be. And so I see that, all the roads I was going down, whether it was drinking and hiding the booze, or, just like, I'm not talking about my feelings. Cause like with my ex, like I never talked about this stuff because she was from the same cloth. Like she was like, oh, I don't talk about that stuff. Right. Therapy and trauma. Like we just, we're both from like what I consider like fundamental Christians. Like we came from that. I'm very structured, like, oh yeah, you don't talk about this if it's not in the Bible. We don't, it doesn't exist, kind of thing. And so very rough and rigid too. Now, like I need to have empathy and love for my neighbors, because I think that's where the lesson that I've learned through all this crap is really, I don't know what anybody's going through. I don't know.
You've got to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
You've got to meet people where they're at.
Because I've had through this whole journey, I've had amazing leaders and I've had terrible leaders. I've had leaders that, like I had one gentleman, his name's Mike, used to be one of my old bosses. And he's like, hey man, I'm noticing your work suffering. I'm noticing there's a lot going on. Like you're not being effective. Like what's going on? He took the time to talk with me. I laid it all out, kind of like what we did today. And he's like, dude, thanks for sharing, man. I got you. Like, what do we need to make sure that you're successful here? How do we make sure that this is the place you're supposed to be? And then I've had bosses that are like, hey, my wife just, she's having an issue at work, or, she's going through this medical procedure, and they're like, sorry, you're here 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I absolutely hate it. So for
There's
me,
no
I'm
reason
like,
for it.
no reason for it. And that's where I think the leadership and the empathy and understanding where people are at, because like no one's going to care in 50 years, like, oh, you worked on Cisco switches? Wow, that's cool, man. Like, no one cares. I look back at my first, second, third, fourth, fifth job. The only thing I remember is the people that were there. That's the only thing I remember. So I think that's one of the goals with the book. That's one of the goals with any position or anything that I do is like people first. You never know what they're going through, and how can we be a good neighbor to those around us?
When you started writing the book, what was the reason you wanted to write the book?
Well, originally it was very, very selfish. It was
okay. That's what I was getting at. I was hoping you were going to say that, because
very selfish.
In my own journey to healing, now, mind you, I kind of say that I cheated. I don't know that I really cheated, because I still had to do a lot of work, but it was plant medicine that healed me, or showed me the path, right? Similar to your LSD experience, that was kind of, whether it was a bad trip, a good trip, whatever, I think it had a big factor in, at least getting you to the point where you realize I've got to ask for help in some way, shape, or form, whether that's from God or from other people, or, and the reason I ask about the book, and why I'm glad you admit that it's selfish, is because I've discovered, whether I do a lot like you. I was a voice notes guy, and now with AI and the ability to have a conversation with AI with random brain dumps of thoughts and being able to get real time feedback. It's like advanced journaling is what I call it. I've never been a journaler. However, when I started leaving myself voice notes and analyzing those, it was very cathartic talking about those feelings. And to your point, you said it earlier in the conversation, you needed to get all of what was in here out on paper. And science proves to us that there is a connection between writing down your thoughts, the pen moving across the paper, and actually alleviating those, I call it Pandora's box feelings or thoughts, right? And so, we know for a fact that is very cathartic and actually helps. So I'm glad that you admit that you started writing the book to get this stuff out for yourself, and then realized at some point, I'm sure, well, if this is helping me, this can help others as well.
Well, that's pretty much the exact pathway, right? Is like, I look back at everything, and when you're going through the valley, right? You're going through the pain. All you feel is that pain. You're like, well, this is never going to end. I don't see. You're very short-sighted, right? You may have people telling you, and you may understand it at the back of your brain, like, oh yeah, I can't last forever, and you have this hope. And knowing that, like, okay, the pain is kind of, there's a song, it's called Blinded, and I'm always a little iffy on As They Lay Dying, the bands, like, just because of their main singer. I love them to death. But I was like, well, their main singer's a little controversial, being that he tried to kill his wife. But they have, yeah. But they have a great song, and it's called Blinded, and one of the lyrics is like, you're blinded by the pain. The pain is so intense or so close to you, right? Like, you have to get some distance from it. So for me, it's like, I always felt like when I heard podcasts, and I'm constantly on the road, so I'm listening, I'm like, man, these guys are talking about this stuff, and it's great. And I'm always like, I need to interject, or I need to put my 2 cents in. And it's almost like, with a lot of people, veterans specifically, they're like, I just want to be heard. I just want somebody to hear my story. I don't need them to agree. I just need them to hear it.
So glad you're bringing this up, man, because I've been doing this particularly, trying to advocate for veterans and find just, a way to help our brothers and sisters. I got started because I was tired, like you, of, every 3, 4, 5, 6 times a month, battle buddy taking his own life or her own life, right? And being in the Facebook groups or being in other group chats with, army buddies or whatever. And they're like, man, so-and-so took their own life. We got to do something about this. Right. But nobody gets off their ass and does anything. And so over the last 18 months of talking to veterans and doing a lot of free pro bono, just coaching or whatever you want to call it, I've discovered that really all they want is an ear. They just want someone to listen. And man, like the power of just sitting with somebody who can listen to you, it's unbelievable, because they'll come back to me a week after our hour long whatever it was, and they're like, dude, I'm still riding the high from the conversation of just being able to dump what I'm thinking and feeling on somebody who understands, and not somebody who's going to sit there and try and give me advice, or somebody who is going to tell me I should do X, Y, and Z. It's just like, you just listen. You just listen and you understand. And I can't tell you how powerful that has been for those folks that have come to me. And I really think that is one of the biggest keys to all of us healing and getting over our whether it's childhood trauma, military trauma, trauma like what you experienced in the civilian kind of side, being in the Army with all the rollovers that you're just blessed enough to be present for, or whatever. It's like just being able to dump that on somebody who understands and who listens is like the biggest key here, I think.
No, it is. Like, I mean, to me, I'm like, I'm in the spot right now where I love quotes. I love giving examples to people, because I'm a visual dude. So like there's that old quote. I think it's like, there's a shooting company who uses it as their motto, and it's like, no one's coming for us, it's up to us, right? And I'm in the stage of life where I'm like, okay, my family, they're all out of state. My wife, her family is either passed on or non-existent. So for us, it's like, we got 4 kids, my wife and I. That's it. Like, we're in the central part of California. We got nobody, and we're at the stage where it's like, we gotta support each other. We have to constantly be there for the other person. We're fighting to try to be the best version of ourselves. And for me, it's like, I got no support, at least at this stage, where I'm like, okay, I have to be the support for myself. So I'm going to dump everything into, my writing. I'm going to put everything there, and I can read it back. And you mentioned AI. When I dump everything in, like if I just, okay, I'm going to do chapter 1, like right now in my structure, I'm like, okay, well, chapter 1, I'm going to start strong. I'm going to talk about that deployment, me being lost in Iraq. I'm going to talk about this. And it's nice because with AI, like I use Notion. So like I put everything and I structure it there. And then you have the option of saying like, okay, I want you to correct grammar. I want you to correct my punctuation. I want you to keep my voice because I don't want it to be in somebody else's voice. But I want you to correct it like a copywriter would. Now, there's still like, it's not perfect. And I'm still at the level where I'm like, okay, that'll get me, maybe 50%, 60% of the way there. And then I could take that. And when I talk to a copywriter, like, okay, this is better than just jumbled disaster of a mess that I started with. Here you go. And so it could save you time. It could save you money. It could do all these things. So like the resources, and even my wife, she was having problems getting into the VA for therapy. And she's like, there's actually an AI therapy tool. Like, it's not perfect. You're not talking to a person, but it prompts you with questions. It helps you with these things. It'll record your answers. Like, it's better than nothing. But the resources that are now available, I think, trump where I was at back in, joining in 2008. Like, there was nothing.
100%. Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. And you're absolutely right. Like, I think once you learn how to leverage AI, you can write a book about 85 to 90% now. You just understanding how to prompt it. And it's leveling the playing field on so many different areas, right? Not just in, careers and entrepreneurship, but also in mental and emotional well-being, right? I won't ever refer to those as therapy apps because, there's some legal jargon behind there that if you create an app like that, but, there is something to be said about having that conversation with the AI when you can't get into a therapist, because let's be honest, the state of mental health care in our country is terrible. It's awful. And a lot of therapists are just, they're overworked and underpaid. And, I'm not saying anything bad about the therapist, because it takes a special kind of person to want to do that work. But, there are some challenges so that they're not able to do their job to the best of their ability. And I think, just having that as just something that can just brainstorm with you, or you can, I'm feeling like shit about XYZ. Can you help me work through this? Or, even like suggest some tools or breathing exercises or whatever that can maybe help me understand what I'm going through. And it's like, it's almost like having a me, right? Like in the example I gave, somebody to listen to you, right? That's really what it comes down to.
Well, that's, there's that common kind of thread of we're all going through this together. Like and that's kind of where my, again, going back to my faith, right, is we're all imperfect people. We're all going to be, going through good times and hard times. And sometimes people just need the hands, man. They need the extra help. They need that. And treating your fellow human being, your fellow person and neighbor, like if I were reversed in this, if I were in their shoes, how would I want to be treated? How would I want that person to, approach this? And it doesn't mean like shooting for the moon, but I mean, just imagine like, okay, there's somebody going through something right now. They're unknown to me, but imagine it's my child. Imagine it's somebody I love dearly. Like, would I want to just say like, oh yeah, resources over there, go check it out? Or would I say, hey, let me walk through this with you. Let me listen to you. And everybody just wants to be understood. Everybody just wants to have somebody that can listen and be like, I got you. You're not you're not weird for having these feelings. You're not this, foreign alien on a different planet. Like, no, you're
not alone. You're not alone.
That's it. You're not alone.
I love it, man. Dude, we have rapidly gone over time here. And so to close this out, I would love for you to just give your, 30-second, tech pitch on why veterans who particularly are transitioning out today and, moving forward, why they should be looking at tech as a viable career field. And then also the one thing that you want them to take away from our conversation today.
So, if you're a veteran in this space, there are a lot of people out there that'll say, okay, well, veterans are damaged, or veterans are, their pathway is different than the civilian sector. The one thing that veterans have that no one else does is the ability to survive, the ability to lead and be successful in those high stress environments. Anytime I go in for an interview, it's, oh, you're a veteran, you know how to be successful, you know how to lead, you have that structure, you have something that nobody else does. You have a golden ticket and an asset, and if, structured and approached properly, you blow everybody else out of the water. And if you're trying to get into tech, the thing that I've been working on recently is how do you get education and certifications and not break the bank? And so, feel free to reach out to me, Nathan Mechikoff on LinkedIn. I do have an article I wrote on there, but I'm not peddling or selling anything. It's always giving back to the veteran or even just tech community. There are dozens, if not thousands, of certifications and education courses you can do for free. You can do in a short pathway, and they're all online. So if you're like, I have nothing to back, I can't get into the field because I have no experience or certs, that's one avenue that we can take care of and say, all right, you can get these certifications, not break the bank, keep that money in there for yourself, for your family, take those. It's a building block, get you to that next level, and just start networking. Start networking with your veterans, start networking with people in the community, because every single job, every single position I've ever done, if you ask me my 2 cents, what got me the jobs, it was somebody I knew, whether it was an old connection, whether it was somebody who saw my post, whether it was somebody who was like, oh, I worked with you in the past, or I know a friend of yours. Never have I gotten a position just by applying on a job board. Not to say there's anything wrong with those, but it's always the people going back to that old adage.
Well, there's a lot wrong with the job boards, like the fact that 83% of postings on job boards are fake. That's a big problem.
Well, and I've even had it in the last couple months. I had one where they took me through like 3 interviews, and then it was like, hey, great, we'll get back to you. Just completely ghosted. Like,
yeah,
there's there's so much that's wrong with that.
Yeah. Nathan, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for the conversation. I think this was extremely valuable, and I love the work that you're doing. I can't wait. When's the book coming out?
Well, I'm hoping, it's April. My goal is to have at least a rough draft by the summer, like fully vetted. And then I'm looking at publishing options. Speaking of veterans, Dead Reckoning Collection.
Okay.
So Dead Reckoning Collection is a veteran publishing company. They have a lot of wonderful books on there. It's exclusive to veterans. They do have a Facebook group for writers. So if you are in the veteran community and you're looking at publishing a book, if you're looking at getting some feedback, they do have some options there in that community. But go check them out. There's a lot of wonderful books and authors on there that are in the veteran space.
I love it, man. We'll have to bring you back when you have a publishing date and all of that to launch the book. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
and definitely want a signed copy from you. Dude,
really you got it, brother.
Really appreciate the conversation today. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Nathan, I'm going to fuck this up again. Mechikoff. Yeah, that's right?
Well,
close.
Depends on who you ask, but you're so close, man. Mechikoff.
Mechikoff. Nathan Mechikoff. Reach out to him on LinkedIn if you're interested in getting into the tech community. He's already elaborated that he shares everything to give back to the tech and veteran community. So leverage that as a resource. And we'll see you next week, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to these conversations, and I hope you find them valuable. Take care, everybody. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.